This morning we thought we would just chat about how to instill better practices into your business. I think there's been a lot of talk, but also I think whilst we're reviewing how to do things better and what's important to us, I genuinely feel that people are starting to have that realization actually we can and we should do better. And whatever is important to you, when we were talking just earlier, it could be anything. So from our point of view, both Karen and I have looked at certain practices, I think over our careers, but also especially in business, about how we want to run things, haven't we? And what's important to us, and also the process that we did to get there, because both of us, we won't take something at face value necessarily. So there's a lot of talk at the moment of certain sort of organisations, say for example like fair trade. If you had a fair trade stamp, I remember working in the coffee industry, and I was surprised that, you know, the coffee clients that I was working with, oh, you're not going for fair trade, just naively as a consumer. And they said, no, actually it doesn't tick the boxes. It doesn't tick the boxes if the farmers the best possible deal. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. And I've kind of gone through it throughout my career. There's certain things like diversity is a big one in my industry, lots of hoo-ha about diversity in PR. And I've just shunned away from it, because I just thought, well, it's just a PR badge of honor really, isn't it? Yeah, look at us, but nothing's really essentially changing.
Just to bring up where you said the coffee thing, and I know, and someone this morning was saying that I saw a post, you know, about checking where your things come from, and things like child and slave labor and all that. And I said, and they just mentioned clothes, and I think maybe one or two other products related to that. I said, well, one of the things you want to maybe check out is coffee and chocolate. They're actually one of the worst, and not many people know about it. So yeah, it's interesting once you delve into things and find out a bit more what actually comes up.
And that, I think that would be the first point, isn't it? It's research. It's like, do not take anything on face value. I think people do it so quickly to try and get that badge on their website, or to say, look at us, we're doing this, or, you know, and actually one of the discussions that we just had was that, say for example, education is super important to you, and that is a very valid cause, like making sure that everyone has access to the right education, or everyone has those opportunities. There could be three ways of tackling that. And I remember working with, it was a charity tech platform, whatcharity.com. I'll give a shout out to them, because actually this really opened up my eyes. And they were really keen that every charity just doesn't talk about the issue, they talk about the impact that they make. And my understanding was, which was an eye-opener for me, is that yes, you could have education, yes, you could have the end result, which is just fairness, inclusive, like just absolutely all equal opportunities for all, not based on social economics, not based on background. But there are three ways that you could perhaps do that. So one of them might be supporting the teachers, one of them might be supporting the children and working directly with them, and another one might be lobbying government, local government or local councils, whatever that might be. But there are different ways to get you to that end goal. So I think what we were talking about is that yes, there could, what's really important to you, and understanding and researching, well, what's the impact that's actually been made, and then asking the questions, because that's the hard part. We just take it on face value, or it's doing it. Ask the questions. Well, how does this impact? What is the change that's actually made? I want to hear about those stories, because it's very often that they don't talk about it, or they talk about something that's actually quite irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter how many women you might have on your board, but if they're not supported, what's the point?
Exactly. I think it's a lot of people do just tick the boxes, and you've really got to look into, you know, what's behind that. And it also comes to when you're buying a lot of products as well, is, you know, their branding that may look all great, and we're doing this and we're doing that, but actually the company that owns them is some big company, massive big brand, which are not instilling good practices. So, you know, are you looking at that and putting pressure on them to change from there upwards as well? I think, you know, rather than just focusing on that small brand, because a lot of these massive big brands go and they buy up these nice little ethical brands because of what of what they represent and what they've got on their customer base. But then what happens is a lot of their customers actually go, well, I don't want to go with you anymore because you're now owned by them who don't care. So this, and a lot of people just don't research into that at all. They just sort of take it as face value, like you say, and believe everything that they read on Facebook. Instead of delving in deeper.
What would you recommend then? Because like I would say read reports. I would say read sort of some of the I mean, again, it's so hard, isn't it? Because if I had to go to my key organisations in my industry, I don't read, and so I go outside of that. We've discussed this before, actually. Sometimes it's not just in your field. When you're trying to be creative, it's not just your best practice within your industry, because that might not have it. Look elsewhere, like look and see what their standards have been that have nailed it, that have done it really, really well, and follow them.
Well, there's a lot now I'm seeing, along the sort of the eco level as well. So people coming up with calculators, because the whole thing about going carbon neutral and net zero and all of that. So you've got a lot of people now jumping on that bandwagon and going, oh well, we've got a calculator for you, and you can sign up and you can work out how much of an impact your business has and how much CO2 you're producing and all of that. And I recently was sort of speaking to a local farmer, and they are looking at changing practices on their farm, whereby they are now, so over the season where they're not growing in certain areas, they want to put cover crops in there that attract biodiversity and bees and insect life and everything, and it's putting carbon back into the soil as well. So they're looking at a project whereby you can work out what your impact is as a business, and then you can offset that in a way. I mean, this is a whole another subject. People carbon offset and that, and it's actually what happens is it's just having a bad impact on someone else in another part of the world. But I love this idea because it is local. It's helping them with the costs of buying all that cover crop and putting it in, and then they're planning to sort of take photos of it, and you can support an acre basically for a very small amount. Yeah. So, but when I was doing the calculator, I was like, well, hang on a minute. What about my impact online? All the stuff I use in the cloud. What about, not just my electricity and that, but what about how much water I'm using? What about the fact if I'm growing something in the garden, does that offset some of what I do? What about internet that I'm using all the time? That has an adverse. So it's really difficult, and you've got to. So at the moment, I'm doing actually I'm signing up to a course about how to sort of green your business and work out these things, and also talking to other people.
Oh, amazing! What's the name of it's a course for the business?
Yeah, it's a lady who was working in sustainability for 10 years, big business, still is, but she's starting this up for small businesses. So I haven't got the exact URL at the moment, but I could share that. And she links off to different carbon calculators, but mostly it's about how to improve things within your business and how to show that then on your website, and your messaging and everything like that. This is what I'm doing, because I do a lot of the stuff, but actually on my about page there's not really the credentials of the things I'm actually doing. So am I using green hosting, am I using blah blah? I haven't actually written that out, so it's something I know I've got to work on.
Yeah, especially for your audience, who you're very eco-conscious, like that's your and actually, do you know what that really comes across is that I think two things from that. I think during this time we're seeing a lot about businesses, like there's been a bit of a reveal about what they're doing, how they step up, and what's really interesting is that, like you just said, you're doing it anyway. And the fact is that you didn't have to take something like this to change your ways. And so from that point of view, that's why, I don't know, I personally would have a lot more respect for a company or a brand when I see that and going, well, actually, they've always been doing it. So when they start talking about these issues, I'm going to listen to what they have to say. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to perhaps reach out to them and ask them how I can improve down that vein. So it's actually, it's a really important factor to promote it. The other thing is that just listening to what you've done, it's exhausting. And I think this is the bit that I have really come out, like really noticed, is that, you can't have an issue that's convenient. No issue is convenient. Like it is an inconvenient truth that that issue exists. Therefore, what we have to do is inconvenient and uncomfortable, and there are times that you don't want to do it, but the fact is the issue will still be there if we don't. And
Yeah, I think you have to make it a part of your life.
yeah,
And if it's something you're passionate about, so you pick something. For me, it's eco. For someone, it might be sort of social. For someone, it might be education. For someone, it might be political. There's all sorts of things that you can pick. And I think sometimes you feel like, oh, I've got to be doing all of it. And I think you've just got to maybe try and pick one and really focus. And it's got to come really from there. It's got to be something you're really passionate about. That it doesn't feel like hard work and overwhelm and, oh my goodness, this is
it
a
does.
real struggle.
Yeah, because you are, I mean, again, you and I both choose to support those businesses to help them succeed. So that's in the framework of how we exist. It's like, do you know what? Anyone that actually, it could be anything for me, but you've got a particular niche. But I'm thinking, well, whatever I offer can go into any sector. So
Yeah, you do, but you've still got that driving force of values and purpose behind the people that you work with.
exactly, and that to me is what is constantly inspirational and keeps me going, makes me want to shout even more. So we talked about research. We've looked at credentials that aren't necessarily, could be face value. So just delve in. The other thing that I was going to say is ask. Like, we have to ask the questions. So as well as adopting it, trying to figure out what the framework is, making sure what structures we're doing, one of the things that really came across to me was that, again, it's only because of recent events, but L'Oreal got hit in terms of how one of its models said, look, we're trying to talk about racial sort of diversity here and how you've shut me down. And actually it could be really, it's received a lot of flack. But the interesting thing is that the person in question has now sat down with the brand. And what came across was that instead of trying to be defensive, or instead of trying to instill your views of how it should be done, ask the questions and find out what is needed, is a complete role reversal that I think that people just take for granted and gloss over. I don't know if you, and again, this is not just one issue. You could do that if I were again to go into, I don't know, poverty. I think a lot of people want to try and do good and they want to rush ahead and go and help, but it's always a short-term solution. But when you were to actually ask, it's like the big issue, brilliant charity, absolutely brilliant charity, but when they actually asked to get you off the streets, what do you need? It's not just the money, it's not just the income. I need a secure job, I need training, I need housing. And the charity behind the magazine and what they do, absolutely phenomenal to make sure that they get off the streets, but then they also have a life.
Yeah, you've got to have that kind of rehabilitation and integration back to society and something forward. You can't just get them off, give them a meal and it's like, oh, that's done now, bye. And this is a lot of the problem a lot of the time with all of the different issues. Is, like you say, it's a very quick short-term solution. Okay, bye now, there's a bit of aid or something. But well, what about building stuff and getting infrastructure and programs and cooperatives in place so they become self-sustainable? You know what I mean? So they're not relying on aid going forward.
Absolutely.
And how can you build in these kind of closed loop systems like circular economy where they've got the resources they need, they've been trained to do things that they can become self-sufficient and do it themselves, and it's not going to happen again. And you just see it happening so much, and so much money going to us. I don't know if someone's suddenly going ticking the box or something, but where are these real solutions? And I think once people like us, people listening or whatever, find something they're really passionate about, then they can be putting pressure on them to change those things. I think that's the way forward. I think a lot of times as well, it's looking what you can do locally and small. Stop trying to always go global, because you don't, as you go from sort of small and local to global, your influence gets less and less and less, especially as a small person or you're not a massive celebrity. So if you're trying to go for that and nothing happens, you just like, oh, I can't, I'm not making any difference. So you have to start small with your local community or local council or a local small project.
Yeah, I think as well, we both come from the perspective that businesses do have the opportunity to do good. Like whereas before we're always reliant on government and how people that do not understand an issue are trying to solve problems, and yet maybe that's the beauty of individuals, absolutely, grassroots organisations, wonderful to coordinate that effort, but I think that's where businesses can come in and really help, because ultimately when businesses do take a step, I've always said it's your votes or it's your money. Like, that's the only thing people seem to understand. And it is genuinely a case of when they know that I heard a brilliant saying, the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. And it was from a young guy from a grassroots charity, Big Kids Foundation. Brilliant, and I've shared it. But I think that it was one of those things that we try, like you say, trying to do the big things, and ultimately it's getting the people together at whatever level it might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, okay. If you've got any great grassroots organisation, just pop it in. We'll share it. Like, just put in what the issue is. So, say for example, it's education, it's homelessness. Like, if you have any of those that you're supporting, just let us know. Drop it in the comments, or just happy to have a look and review and just give it a little shout out. I'd love to.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and we'll share some links as well of things that we come across of people doing great things and ways you can, if you're interested about anything in particular. I'll share the details of that course maybe as well. So
yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Well, have a great rest of the week, folks. It's a hump day. We're over the gist of it. I've got my coffee.
yeah, almost finished my coffee, but yeah, we'll see you same time next week. Tune in to the Small Biz Chat.
Loving it. Take care, folks.
Goodbye.